All right, let's go. Legislative branch. Here's what you need to know. Copy this information down for me as I lecture it to you. And this is going to be a graphic organizer. Okay, so just kind of model it just like it looks, draw it just like it looks on your paper, what you see here on my notes. All right, starting with the legislative branch, right? We know this is found in Article 1 of the Constitution. There's 7 articles. This is the first article. It's all about the legislative branch. The main job, main duty of the legislative branch is to make laws. All right, I remember asking you guys over and over and over, what kind of Congress do we have? We have a two-house Congress, right? Also known as a bicameral Congress. Two-house, bicameral. This word Congress, same thing as the legislative branch. It's the body of people that make laws for our government, okay? So here we go. Two houses. What are the names of the two houses of Congress? You have the HOR, stands for the House of Representatives, and you have the Senate. Okay, before we move on and look at the characteristics and qualifications of each of these, let's go over here real quick and let's find out why we have a bicameral Congress. It has to do with the history lesson we got early on in the class. The forefathers of our country are getting together and they're trying to design a government that fixes the problems going on with the AOC. Remember, you had the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan. Both were plans for how to organize the government. And the Virginia plan represented the large states. The New Jersey plan represented the small states, and they were, kind of not wanting to budge. Both wanted their way, and so the folks from Connecticut stood up and they gave a proposal. Okay, this is known as the Connecticut Compromise. Okay, also known as the Great Compromise. It was so great. The reason this is how it got its nickname. It was so great. It settled the differences between the two plans of government, the Virginia plan and New Jersey plan, the large state versus small states, that they were able to finalize the Constitution and move forward. Okay, after they came up with this compromise. What does it mean? It means basically that we're going to have a bicameral Congress, two houses, right? Representation was the big argument of how we're going to figure out how many representatives your state gets to send to Congress. That was the big argument, and this Connecticut Compromise settled the differences between the two states, or the two plans. Okay, you're going to see more here in a minute as we go through the details. But the compromise made the small states happy with the setup of the Senate, and the large states or the big states were happy with the setup of the House of Representatives in terms of representation. Okay, and we're going to go into that here now. Okay. So going back over here, you got the House, you got the Senate. What's the difference? Well, first, let's look at the age requirements for each. Let's look at the number of years you got to be a U.S. resident, and let's look at where you got to live. Okay, those are going to be the three main differences for each. Okay, starting with the House, you got to be 25 years old. This is what it actually says in the Constitution. There's 3 requirements you got to meet. Okay, to be a House of Representatives. Okay, you got to be 25 years old. You got to be a 7-year U.S. citizen. And you got to live in the district that you represent. Okay, a couple things about that. Okay, you can move from another country, become a naturalized citizen in America, and eventually run after you've been here for 7 years as a House of Representative, right? You have to live where you want to represent. So, like we live here in Tampa, and our districts like District 14 or 12, whatever it is, right? And you have to live here in order to run. You can't live in Georgia or California and want to run to be the representative here in our district in Tampa. Okay, so that's the qualification you got to meet. Is you got to be from there. You got to know what the people want before you can represent them, right? You got to basically walk in their shoes by living here, right? And so that's the requirement. Compare these requirements here to the Senate. Look, you got to be a little bit older. You got to be 30 years old, right? 5 years older than a House of Representatives. And the reason they kind of set it up like that is they wanted, if you wanted to be a politician and kind of move your way up all the way to be the President of the United States, it's like a progression. 25 years old, you start out in the House. When you get to 30 years old, okay, maybe you're ready to get some more responsibility and kind of move up. So now you can run for the Senate. And then think about how old you got to be the President. You got to be 35. All right, so it's kind of like a stepping stone. Okay, you start at the House, then the Senate, and then eventually you're eligible to run for the President of the United States. So everything I tell you about the Senate, I want you to think for the Senate, you're going to be older, wiser, and more prestigious. You're going to have more responsibilities. and privileges, okay? So here we go with the Senate. You'll notice these numbers are probably going to be higher, okay? Or they will be higher. Okay, 30 years old, you got to be a 9-year U.S. resident compared to 7, okay? And you must live in the state that you represent, okay? So rather than being from a particular district, and I'll try to make some light of this information. I'll try to make this more understandable here in just a minute, as far as districts versus being from the state. But a senator, there's only 2 senators per state, and they represent the entire state of Florida, or the entire state that they're from, rather than just being from a small little district like a House of Representatives. Okay, so but again, if I live in Georgia or California, I can't run for Senate in Florida. I got to be from here in order to represent the people. Okay, so those are the requirements, or the qualifications for the House and the Senate. Okay, age, residency, and where you specifically have to live. Okay. All right, guys, what you're looking at here is the congressional map of the state of Florida. So basically, in Florida, we have 27 House of Representatives, and I'll go into explaining that more here in a little bit later in more detail, okay? But each state has the number of representatives that matches their population total. So this goes back to the Connecticut Compromise, right? Representation is going to be based on your state's population total, right? So in Florida, we have a large population compared to some of the other states. So out of the 435 seats in the House, we have 27 of those seats currently. Because we have 27 seats, or 27 House of Representatives to our state, what they have to do is they take the map of Florida and they break it up into 27 different districts. Notice up here is district number 1. All the way down here is district 27. Okay, what you'll notice is they're all different shapes and sizes, right? The area that we live in is going to be down here, and it says district 16. Some of us may live in district 14, 15, 16. It just really depends on where our address is, right? My point with showing you this right now, okay, is that one of the qualifications in order to be a House of Representative is you must live in the district that you want to represent. So, for example, Kathy Castor, right? She lives in, I believe, District 13, right? We have a representative named Vern Buchanan. He's our representative for District 16, right? And so they have to live there and own a house, basically, right? That's where they receive their mail at. They live there, and they want to represent the people that live there and get voted in as a House of Representative, okay? They cannot live, those folks I just mentioned, they cannot live like, up here in the Panhandle and represent this area down here where we live. So as a House of Representative, you have to live in the district, according to this map here, you got to live in the district of where you want to represent, okay? Now, compare this to a senator. All these districts don't matter, okay? The entire state matters, okay? If you want to be a senator, you're elected from the state at large. So the entire state votes for our 2 senators. There's only 2 of them, okay? So there's 27 House of Representatives, but there's only 2 senators. And the entire state votes for who those 2 senators are going to be, okay? So we're talking about Marco Rubio and our former governor, Rick Scott. Those are our 2 senators currently, right? And they represent the entire state. So they can live somewhere in the state. It doesn't matter where. And folks from all over the state are going to vote for who those senators are going to be. Where, let's say, for the House of Representatives, okay, I was talking about Vern Buchanan. He's our House of Representative for District 16. Only the people in District 16 that live here voted for his position, okay? Nobody else around Florida would vote for who that person's going to be. Only the folks within that district get to vote for who their representative is going to be. Hopefully that makes some sense to you guys, understanding that qualification a little bit better, in comparing being voted in from a district versus being voted in at large. Being voted in from a district is how House of Representatives get voted in, okay? And then how senators get voted in is being elected at large, meaning the entire state gets to vote for them. Hey, the last thing I'll say is this. A state like Wyoming that has a super small population, I think only 450,000 people live there, right? Their entire state makes up one congressional district. They only have one House of Representatives, right? So just like a senator gets voted in at large, that House of Representatives from the state of Wyoming would get voted in at large as well. But it just has simply to do with because their population numbers are so small. There's only like 7 states that have one House of Representatives, right? Such as, you know, the Wyoming and North and South Dakota, those small states like that where, you know, it's real country rural where not a whole lot of folks live. Okay, they typically only have the one House of Representatives. And so anyway, most of the other states, I would say 43 of the other states have more than one House of Rep. So you're going to look at their congressional district map, and it's going to kind of look similar to this. Okay, just depends on how many House of Representatives they have, will determine how many districts they actually have, and hopefully that makes some sense for you guys. All right, guys, now we're done with the qualifications that the Constitution has to be a House of Rep and Senator. And now we're going to move on to the characteristics of the House versus the Senate. Okay, we're going to focus on how many members, all right, how many members are there in each of the houses? How long of a term does each of the representatives get to serve? And then how is representation in each state determined? We're going to knock out those super quick. Okay, so here we go. Comparing the House to the Senate, there are 435 total members in the House of Representatives. Again, these are going to be representatives from all over the 50 states in the United States of America. Okay, we call this the larger House. Okay, they have larger members. Okay, compared to the Senate only has 100 members. Okay, so there are 2 per state. Okay, as far as senators goes, there's only 2 per state. There's 50 states in the United States, and each state gets 2 senators per state. Okay, House of Representatives, it's based on your state's population. So I was telling you earlier, Florida has 27 House of Representatives. So out of these 435 seats, Florida has 27. A state like Wyoming might only have 1, right? And then a state like California has 53. So it's all dependent on your state's population as to how many of these members you have. And it does change. We'll talk more about that here in just a minute. But just comparing the two, 435 members to 100 members, the House is larger in terms of members, okay, number of representatives, okay? Each House of Representatives serves a 2-year term, okay? So it's almost like they're constantly up for re-election. As soon as they get elected, less than a year and a half later, they're up for a re-election trying to get voted back in. Where a senator serves a 6-year term. So they're further removed from the election process. And like I was telling you earlier, I want to paint this picture for you that the Senate is an older, wiser, more prestigious position. They have more privileges and things. They serve a longer term, right? You have to be a little older, right? And so just comparing the two, the Senate serves a longer term. So, you know, they deal with more major issues than a House of Representatives would, I would say. We'll kind of move on from there. But I do want to say before I move on that both of the House and the Senate, they can serve as many terms as they can get elected. There is no term limit. So like we're going to talk about the president here soon, and the president can only serve a two-term max, right? So, but the House of Rep and a senator, there's people that have been serving for over 30 years, right? As long as they can keep getting the votes and keep getting reelected, they can keep serving, okay? There is no term limit on that for either position. All right, I put a star next to this one here. This is important. Representation, the number of people that you can send to the House or the number of people that your state can send to the Senate, right? These are the rules, okay? And this goes back to the Connecticut Compromise again. Representation in the House of Representatives is going to be based on your state's population. The more people that live in your state, the more representatives you're entitled to, okay? Now, your question you might have is, how do we know how many people live in your state? Well, every 10 years, right? Every 10 years, there's something called the census that takes place. The census is a population survey, right? It happens every 10 years, where basically paperwork goes out, okay, to residents all across America, and they fill it out talking about how many people live in their household, okay, and they calculate that up, and then they basically redistribute the seats in the House based on your state's new population total. So I told you guys earlier that Florida has 27 House of Reps and California has 53 and Wyoming only has 1. Well, there's only 435 seats total, right? But the amount of the amount of representatives that your state has can change every 10 years based on the information that comes back on the census, okay? So if we show that in the state of Florida we gain population, we will probably gain representatives, right? If we lose population, people move. People move from here. They maybe go to Arizona or something. They get a new job out there or something, right? Then what would happen is, since our population decreased, we would lose representation. Okay, when one state gains, another state loses in terms of representation. There's only ever going to be 435 seats, but the number of representatives that your state has can fluctuate every 10 years based on how many people live in your state. And they know how many people live in your state and have moved around the country based on the census, which is a population survey that happens every 10 years. I just filled mine out with my wife here recently. We're in the year 2020, and this is the census year. The next census will be in 2030, right? And it's just basically 10 questions that come, and they ask you a little bit about yourself, to gather information. They even will ask you about your race and gender and ethnicity and things like that. So it's an opportunity for the government to kind of get some information on what do their citizens look like. Okay. Once they have that information, they'll redistribute those 435 seats in the House based on the new population totals. And then that map I showed you earlier of Florida with the 27 districts, they may have to redistrict the map of your state if your population total has changed, meaning your representation total has changed. So, for example, when I first started teaching government, we only had 25 House of Representatives, right? So this is like the year 2000. In 2010, the census came out, right? And we showed that we gained population. So we actually gained 2 representatives. We went from 25 to 27. So because we gained, that means another state had to lose. And I believe New York was one that lost. I think they went, they lost 2. So that makes sense. People move from the cold down to the south where it's warm. I mean, that makes sense, right? So because they lost, they had to redistrict their map. Okay, let's say from 31 to 29, I think is what they went to, right? We had to redistrict our map in the state of Florida. We only had 25 districts because we had 25 House of Reps. Well, now we have 27 House of Reps, so we have to redistrict the map to reflect our new representation total. So we busted up the map to represent 27 districts. And that's this map here that you see now, okay, with the 27 different districts in the state of Florida. Each one of these districts represents an area where a House of Representative is from, okay? They have to live there, and they're from there. Now, a little bit more information about these districts. Each district represents an area of where about 700,000 people live, okay? So if you wanted to know the population count of a state, you look at how many districts they have, and you can multiply that by 700,000 people, okay? So when the state of Florida is drawing these districts up, they have to make them as evenly as possible to represent areas where, it's going to be a representative of about 700,000 people. Now, you'll notice some of these districts here on this map of Florida are large, like District 2 is large, right? And it has like 14 to 16 different counties involved in that one district. Well, then look down here in Hillsborough County, District 13, 14, and 16. These are a heck of a lot smaller than District 2, right? But you know about population. Try to go somewhere at 5 o'clock in Tampa, right? I mean, it's gridlock, right? Because it's so thick of traffic. So comparing this, it's a lot of city life. There's airports, there's malls, there's sports teams. There's a lot of people that live here. There's jobs. We're up here in the Panhandle. It's a lot of country land and farmland, right? So it takes a lot of large territory to make up an area where 700,000 people live to represent one district. Where down here where there's a lot of people, the districts are a lot smaller and tighter. All right, a few more things and then we'll wrap this up, okay, about congressional districts. Just to review real quick, okay, Florida has 27 districts because we have 27 House of Representatives. Why do we have 27 House of Representatives? Because of our state's population total, right? The number of representatives your state gets is based on your state's population total. And we know our population total because every 10 years there's a census, okay, which is a population survey, okay? So the government redistributes the seats in the House every 10 years based on your new state's totals, and then you have to redistrict the map of Florida if we do change. If we don't change, they don't have to redo this map. But if we do lose or we gain a House of Representatives, they have to redistrict this map, okay? Each one of these districts represents an area where 700,000 people live. Okay, you'll notice there's an area like District 2, which is really, really large, okay, geographically, but that's only an area that represents where 700,000 people live, right? Because each one of these districts represents about 700,000 people. Look down here in Miami. You see a bunch of districts really small, right? But these are still areas where 700,000 people live. It's just they're more congested and on top of each other. It's a heavily populated area. Again, it just makes sense because there's a lot of jobs, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of airports, sports teams, all those kind of things that people enjoy that live in the city. So where there's a lot of people, they can make a lot of small districts. Each district represents an area where 700,000 people live, okay? We live in this area right here, District 16. Some of us, depending on our address, might live in 14 or 13. Maybe even 15. It just depends on where your address is. But I know there's over 2 million people that live in the Tampa Bay area. And so, that's why we have so many districts, because they are supposed to represent only 700,000 people per district. So those are kind of the rules I'm just trying to explain to you here. Okay? Okay, I went to a website here and typed in our address for East Bay High School. And here it says that our House of Representative for District 16, and again, District 16 is right here on the map, right? Who's our representative for the House of Representatives for our area is going to be this guy right here, Vern Buchanan, okay, District 16. And this is 2020 we're talking about, right? Okay, and he represents all 700,000 people that live in that area, okay? He's up for re-election every 2 years. And he is a Republican. Okay, he's voted in from a district. There you go. I think you guys understand. Moving on, each state has 2 senators. So this state of Florida, forget these districts for a minute, but the entire state of Florida, right, has 2 senators. Okay, our 2 senators for this is year 2020. Like I said, is Marco Rubio and Rick Scott. Okay, they're from the entire state, not from a specific district. So senators, there's 2 per state. Now, one thing I need to tell you is because they serve a 6-year term, their terms are staggered. So an election occurs every 2 years, right? But not every 2 years are we voting for a senator. It depends on what class is up. So there's 3 classes, okay? It's class 1, 2, and 3. So Marco Rubio is going to be in one of those 3 classes, and Rick Scott is going to be in one of those 3 classes. So every 6 years, we're basically going to be voting for one of those classes. So that means there's going to be one election where no senator is up for re-election in the state of Florida. Hopefully that makes sense. But they stagger the terms where both senators are never going to be up for re-election at the same time. So while Marco Rubio is facing re-election, Rick Scott is going to be safe, still serving out the rest of his term, okay? And then vice versa. If Marco Rubio, let's say Rick Scott's up for re-election, right? Then Marco Rubio would be safe, finishing out the remainder of his term, okay? And so both of them do serve a 6-year term, but their election time occurs in different phases, if you will, okay? And they do that to make sure that we always have experienced senators in our Congress. So potentially, if you go back to Vern Buchanan real quick, All 435 seats in the House are up for re-election every 2 years. They don't stagger their terms. So potentially, if American people wanted to vote all of their House of Representatives out of the office and replace all 435 of them, we could every 2 years, right? However, the Senate doesn't work like that. They stagger the terms of all the senators. So only 33%, okay, about 33 or 34 of the senators out of the 100 are up for re-election every 2 years, while the other 66 to 67 of those senators are safe from having to worry about being re-elected in that election cycle. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of explain that to you a little bit. Let's talk about a number of people that they represent, okay? I want to talk about the term constituency or constituents. Constituents means the number of people that you represent, okay? So let's talk about Vern Buchanan. As a House of Representative, remember, he represents only the people in District 16. Remember, that's going to be about 700,000 people, right? Now, when we talk about constituency, the number of people that you represent, and we're talking about senators, Marco Rubio and Rick Scott, they represent the entire state of Florida. So what is our population in the state of Florida? 18 million people. So Vern Buchanan in the House of Representatives only represents 700,000 people, the folks that live in that one district, where Marco Rubio and Rick Scott represent the entire state of Florida, all 18 million people. So in terms of significance, right, in terms of responsibility, Marco Rubio and Rick Scott have tremendously more, because they're worried about 18 million people, right? Where Vern Buchanan is only concerned about 700,000, okay? So that makes, kind of brings to light why they have to be older, why they're more prestigious, they have more responsibility, they get paid more compared to Vern Buchanan, who's a House of Representative. But like I said, it's a stepping stone. Who knows? One day Vern Buchanan might want to step up and become a senator. You know what I mean? That is very possible. Okay, next topic is going to be gerrymandering. Okay? The definition is that this occurs during redistricting to gain a political advantage. I got a quick little video that's going to explain this in a little bit more detail. And hopefully they can do a better job with this video than I can. But in a nutshell, okay, before I run the video for you, when you're looking at these districts and how they're drawn, maybe like the shapes of them, notice that they're drawn in all different kind of shapes. Now, I just told you each district represents an area where 700,000 people live, right? But how come they're funky shapes? You know what I mean? Like, how come they're not just squares and triangles or circles, right? How come they're, drawn in odd shapes? Well, it's called gerrymandering, okay? And the political party in control of drawing these lines is going to be every 10 years when the census occurs, whichever political party has the majority in the state government legislature, they're the ones that are going to get to control the drawing of the lines. So in the state of Florida, Republicans, they're the majority party. The folks that report to Tallahassee up here, right? Our state government, right? Our capital. Okay, is going to be majority of Republicans in our Congress, right? And so they're the ones in control of drawing these district lines. And so it's like playing a game. They're going to draw the lines to benefit their party as best as they can. Okay? And what I mean is, out of these 27 districts, they're wanting to draw these district lines so to assure that they can win as many for their political party as they possibly can, so they can further their agenda in the national government. Okay, so I'm going to play this video now, and hopefully it'll make some sense to you a little bit better as to the strategy behind gerrymandering and the drawing of these odd-shaped lines for the districts.
Most people have heard the word gerrymandering once or twice, probably during a presidential election. What exactly is gerrymandering? Essentially, it's the process of giving one political party an advantage over another political party by redrawing district lines. It's like Democrats trying to gain an advantage over Republicans, or Republicans trying to gain an advantage over Democrats. You see, each party wants to gain as many districts as possible so they can do things like control the state budget or set themselves up to win even more districts in the future. So, To understand how this process began and how it continues today, we must go back to 1812 in Massachusetts. Elbridge Gerry, the governor of Massachusetts, supported and signed a bill to allow redistricting. That is, redrawing the boundaries that separate districts. The catch? The new lines would favor Gerry's own political party, the Democratic-Republican Party, which no longer exists. You see, Gerry wanted his party to win as many state Senate seats as possible. The more members of your party who vote, the more likely you are to win an election. The new lines were drawn to include loads of areas that would help Governor Gerry in the future. They were so strange-looking that someone said the new districts looked like a salamander. The Boston Gazette added Gerry's name to the word salamander, and voila, gerrymandering, the process of dividing up and redrawing districts to give your political party an advantage. So how exactly does someone go about protecting their own political party and actually gerrymandering a district? There are two successful practices: packing a district and cracking a district. Packing is the process of drawing district lines and packing in your opponents like cattle into as few districts as possible. If more districts equals more votes, the fewer the districts there are, the fewer votes the opposition party will get. Packing, then, decreases the opponent's voter strength and influence. Cracking is the opposite, taking one district and cracking it into several pieces. This is usually done in districts where your opponent has many supporters. Cracking spreads these supporters out among many districts, denying your opponent a lot of votes. When you have a large number of people who would generally vote for one type of party, those folks are known as a voting bloc. Cracking is a way to break that all up. So when would a party choose to pack their opponent's districts rather than crack them? Well, that really depends on what the party needs. To dilute your opponent's voters, you could pack them into one district and leave the surrounding districts filled with voters of your own party. Or, if you and your party are in power when it's time to redraw district lines, you could redraw districts and crack up a powerful district and spread your opponent's voters out across several neighboring districts. So, Governor Gerry in 1812 wanted to gain an advantage for his party and redrew district lines in his state in such a crazy way, we have a whole new word and way of thinking about how political parties can gain advantages over their opponents. Politicians think of creative ways to draw districts every few years. So, the next time an election comes around and politicians ask people to vote, be sure to look up the shape of your district and the districts that surround it. How wide does your district stretch across your state? Are all of the districts in your state relatively the same shape? How many other districts does your district touch? But always be sure to ask yourself, does my district look like a salamander?
All right, I just wanted to make this point real quick before I moved on. I really want to emphasize these three qualifications right here for the House and these three for the Senate. These are the three official qualifications you got to meet to be a House of Rep or a Senator according to the Constitution of the United States, right? On the final exam, if we were to have it, okay, or the test, I would try to quiz you on this by saying, you know, do you have to be a man? Do you have to be rich? Do you have to have a college degree? Right? I'm going to ask you those questions to make sure that you know what are the three official qualifications of both. What I'm trying to say is, if I list anything other than these three qualifications regarding age, residency, or citizenship, and where you got to live, residency, then I'm just trying to trick you. Okay, nowhere here in the Constitution, right, according to these three qualifications for each, does it say you have to have a college degree. That means if you can convince people to vote for you and you dropped out of high school, well, it's what the people want. They voted you in, you know what I mean? As long as you meet the age, the residency, and you live where you're supposed to live, you're good. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to be a man. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to, have to be a straight person. You know what I mean? Like, you only have to meet these three qualifications for both the House and the Senate in order to run. And that's it. So any question concerning college degree is just trying to trick you a little bit, okay? All right, let's talk about some special privileges that the Senate has that the House of Representatives don't have. Okay, we're going to be learning about how a bill becomes a law here very shortly. But a bill is an idea for a law. And what happens is it goes into the Senate or the House, right, but we're focusing just specifically on the Senate right now, right? So before it can be voted out of the Senate and moves on to the next step, it has to pass through a vote in the chamber in the Senate. And so there's something called a filibuster. Okay, this is going to be a special privilege that only applies to the Senate. Because there's less members, they can have, there's no time limits on debates is what I'm trying to say, right? And so if, the opposing party knows that there's going to be a bill that's going to pass, what they can try to do is a last-ditch effort to delay a vote from taking place and just filibuster, just basically talk a bill to death to try to delay or prevent it from the vote happening. Okay, maybe try a last-ditch effort to change everybody's mind, right? They don't do this over in the House because there's so many members. There's 435, so they have strict time limits on debates. But over in the Senate, that's one thing that they can do is they have endless time debates. So sometimes these senators will take advantage of that by trying to filibuster, right? And so I wanted to show you who has the world record for the longest filibuster, right? This guy right here, Strom Thurmond. He was a senator from South Carolina, and he was trying to block the 1957 Civil Rights Act by just using a filibuster, talking a bill to death. So as far as a filibuster goes, there's no rules about what you got to talk about. So he stands up there for 24 hours and 18 minutes. That's the record, right? And he just goes on and on and on. He reads his grandmother's cookbook. He's reading the telephone pages, and he's just doing all he can to delay a vote from taking place. Now, here's the funny part of the story. As soon as he sits down after 24 hours and 18 minutes, the Civil Rights Act passes. So his filibuster was unsuccessful. But it is a privilege of the Senate that they have that right to do to use. Okay, the only way to stop a filibuster is going to be using what they call using a cloture vote. Okay, it's basically where they'll take a timeout from the filibuster and say, hey, do we want to use a cloture here, which they'll have to have 2/3 vote in the Senate in order to pass it. But they're saying, okay, we're going to put a time limit on this particular topic that we're debating. That's the only way you could kind of stop it. But hey, I know me, I like to watch a train wreck every now and then. So if somebody wanted to get up there and try to filibuster something, I might see how long they can go without having to use the bathroom or something like that. So it's kind of a neat little thing you'll see pop up from time to time in our government. The senators trying to use a filibuster. Okay, the last privilege I want to talk to you about that the senators have is they get to confirm or approve all of the president's appointments. So the president gets to appoint people like judges, Supreme Court justices, ambassadors to another country, cabinet members, things like that. And yeah, the president can choose whoever he wants, but it faces approval of the senators. So basically, there's a committee that these folks that the president appoints to certain positions. They'll go up in front of this senators committee, and they'll have to grill them like a job interview almost, and confirm or approve whether or not they're going to allow this person to be in that position or not. And so a lot of times the president gets a pre-approval before he appoints somebody to make sure that the senators are going to, maybe they can suggest somebody, but so the process goes smoother. But there have been times where the president appoints somebody and the Senate says no. That is possible. They got to make sure that the person is worthy, and they're worthy of representing the American people. Take for example a Supreme Court justice. They serve a term of life. So it's not something where you enter into and then you get voted out 2 years later or 6 years later. You're serving there till forever. You know what I mean? As long as you have good conduct. So they want to make sure the person that's getting appointed to that position is worthy of it. So that's a very important privilege that the Senate has. All right, guys, real quick, I wanted to also add, when we talk about senators' privileges that they have that the House does not, we need to talk about impeachment. Impeachment is the removal of a government official for wrongdoing. Basically, you're firing them, okay? And this could, could be applied to anyone in government. It could be a senator, a House of Rep, a president, even a Supreme Court judge. Anytime there's wrongdoing, what happens is it goes up for an impeachment trial. Okay, the House brings you up on charges, and then the Senate holds the trial to determine if you're innocent or guilty or not. Okay, so that would be a privilege of the Senate, is that they actually hold the trial to determine if they're going to impeach a government official or not. Okay, we'll talk later when we get to the executive branch about how there's never been a president that has been impeached. However, there has been several presidents that have been up for impeachment, but there's never been one to be fully impeached from office. I mean, President Trump in 2020, he was facing impeachment, and it went over to the Senate, and they decided to acquit him. So that's a special privilege that the Senate has, to hold the actual trial. All right, this is the last part for the House of Representatives before we move on to how a bill becomes a law. I want to talk with you guys about the leadership in the House of Representatives. Okay, so there is, 435 House of Representative members, but there is some leadership that goes on, or a hierarchy. Okay, so I like to explain the head coach, the quarterback, the boss man, so to speak, of the House of Representatives is going to be known as the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House is the leader for the entire House of Representatives, and there's a couple cool things about this position. Number one, they're voted in to that position by their peers. Okay, so whichever party, the two main political parties are the Democrats and the Republicans, right? So out of those 435 seats in the House, whichever party has the most members, they get to select who their Speaker of the House is going to be. So currently, that position is filled by Nancy Pelosi. She's a Democrat from California, and it's usually the eldest member in the House of Representatives that gets to serve in that role, right? But they're appointed by the majority party in the House of Representatives, okay? And so a couple cool things, like I said, about this position is the Speaker of the House is actually in the line of succession to replace the president, God forbid anything happened. So, matter of fact, it's second in line. So let's say the president died, God forbid, something happened to the president died. Who would step up to be the president? The vice president, right? So if something happened to the president and the vice president, the Speaker of the House would be next up in the line of succession to be the president of the United States. So technically, we haven't had a woman to be the president of the United States yet, but literally, if President Trump and Mike Pence, our vice president, if those two guys were to, God forbid something happened to them where they would die, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, would be our president of the United States. And she would be the first female president of the United States, which is kind of crazy to think about it like that. But okay, let's move on over here, and I want to talk about the remaining leadership. Okay, so you have what we call majority and minority. Okay, majority, these leadership roles are going to be filled by the party that has the most members. So I just told you that the Democrats got to choose the Speaker of the House over in the House of Representatives because they have the most members. So their leadership is going to fill all of the majority leadership spots. So you have the majority leader, okay, which directly reports to the Speaker of the House. And basically the majority leader, Steny Hoyer here, right, he's going to be a Democrat. Okay, all these positions on the majority side are going to be Democrats because they have the most members in the House. But he basically tells people of the party how they're going to vote. Okay, on different issues. On different issues, hey, this is how the Democratic Party were wanting to vote, and it kind of trickles down throughout the leadership, and they spread it to all their members to make sure that they're all on the same page when it comes to voting and representing the party's agenda on the issues. Okay, so you have the majority leader. Okay, you have the majority whip, who is an assistant to the leader. Okay, and then you have assistants. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand there's the Speaker of the House and then the leader of the party, or the majority leader, right? So that's going to be Steny Hoyer. And then the majority whip, which is the assistant to the majority leader, is James Clyburn, okay? I'm not going to test you on these people because they constantly change. Remember, every 2 years there's an election for the House of Representatives. So it's possible Nancy Pelosi next election, which is going to happen here in November, right? In November of 2020, if the Republicans swing it where they have more members than the Democrats, well, then they're going to elect who the Speaker of the House is going to be, and it'll be somebody from their party. So this person can change, and then all these people that are in majority positions now will turn to minority positions, and then these folks over here, the Republicans, will flip over here to the majority because they have the most members. I'm saying if that was to happen, okay? So that's kind of how it works. Same kind of thing over here on the Republican Party side. You have the Republican leader, but this is because they have the least members in the House. They're called the minority leader. Okay, so Kevin McCarthy is the minority leader. Okay, he's the head of the Republican Party, right? He would probably be the guy who would sit in the Speaker of the House spot if the Republicans in the next election were to take over. That's kind of how you would want to look at it. He makes sure that the Republican Party stays together and they all vote similar on issues. The Republican whip here, Steve Scalise, I think is how you say it. He reports directly to the leader and gets out the information to the rest of the Republican Party, Republican representatives when it's time to vote. Okay. What else can I tell you? I know. Think about whips. I know it's kind of a funny word. Think of them like an assistant to the actual leader. And in addition to disseminating information to the representatives, they're also going to collect information. So the minority leader or the majority leader might tell their whip, hey, go out there and see what people think about this. And they'll report back. So it's an important position, very prestigious. And it's kind of, the steps that you take on your way to trying to become the Speaker of the House. Okay. All right, let's talk about the Senate now. It's very similar to how the House of Representatives leadership works, but the leaders at the top are slightly different. Okay, so let me talk about the head coach, the quarterback, the leaders, if you will, the boss people over in the Senate. Instead of like the Speaker of the House was the solo leader of the House of Representatives, you actually have two presiding officers, that's what we call them, two presiding officers over in the Senate. You have the president of the Senate, that's what they call them, is actually whoever our current vice president of the United States is the president of the Senate. It's an honorary position. They actually don't do much. They actually don't show up much at all. And when they do, they really can't vote unless there's a tie. They can put things up for a debate and whatnot, but they really, it's just an honorary position that they serve in that role, particularly like in the State of the Union. Okay, they're a representative of the Senate. Okay, so the vice president serves as the president of the Senate, who is a presiding officer, right? But the true leader, the equivalent of the Speaker of the House, but over in the Senate, is going to be this guy right here, the president pro tempore, or they shorten it up and they say the president pro temp, T-E-M-P, right? The president pro tempore. This position is equivalent to the Speaker of the House, like I said. A couple things. Currently, we have more Republicans than we do Democrats in the Senate. So the majority party gets to select over in the Senate. The majority party in the Senate gets to select who serves in this spot, and it's usually the eldest member, like I was telling you over in the House, right? So currently we have more Republicans than Democrats in the Senate. So this person, the president pro tempore, is Chuck Grassley, who's a Republican, and he, like I said, he has many of those same privileges as Nancy Pelosi did, the Speaker of the House, right? So he's actually in the line of succession as well. He's third in line. So if something happened to the president, the vice president, and the Speaker of the House, the president pro tem is number 3. Okay, so right after the Speaker of the House, to be the president of the United States would be the president pro tempore. So we're going to talk about presidential succession. There's actually a list of like 18 people, right? But this guy right here serves third on that list. Okay, but it's a very, very important, very prestigious position. Okay, now like I was just telling you, over in the Senate, the majority party is the Republican Party. So when we talk about majority party versus the minority party, the majority party over here in the Senate is going to be the Republican Party. So the leadership for the majority is going to be Republicans. So the majority leader in the Senate is going to be this guy right here, Mitch McConnell. He's a Republican from Kentucky. Okay? So again, he just kind of organizes the party in terms of the Senate and makes sure everybody's on the same page and votes in a similar manner. You'll see him on the TV a lot because he's a representative of the Republican Party in terms of the Senate. His assistant is the majority whip here, John Thune, I guess is how you say it. He's also a Republican. Okay, and then you have the flip side. The minority party in the Senate is going to be the Democrats, right? And so their leader, okay, the minority leader in the Senate is going to be Charles Schumer. Okay, he's a Democrat from New York. You see him on TV a lot as well. And his assistant is going to be Richard Durbin, a Democrat from Illinois. He's the whip, the Democratic whip, or the minority whip. And again, he just assists. The minority leader any way he can. Okay, let's say in the next election, 2020, Democrats win the majority in the Senate. Well, then they'll get to choose who serves in that role of President pro tempore, that leader, that presiding officer. And we would assume it would be this guy because he's their eldest member, kind of already in this leadership role. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the current breakdown of our legislative branch. Okay, House versus the Senate. This is going to be as of the 2018 election. Every 2 years is an election, right? And we're going to have an election coming up here in 2020 in November, right? So before we get to that, let's look at the current breakdown of the Senate, right? And I want to look at majority versus minority, right? Out of the two main political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, who has more members in the Senate and who has more members in the House, okay? And so out of the 100 members in the Senate, right, you can see out of the red and the blue dots, red is Republican and blue is Democrat, there are more Republicans, right? If you see these white dots here, those are independent. There's not very many independent folks. So we're just going to focus on the Democrats versus Republican. Okay, as of, looks like January 6th, 2020, there are 45 Democrats to 53 Republicans. Man, that's pretty darn close. But what that means and the significance of it is that the Senate has the majority over in the Senate. So when things come up for a vote, probably the Republicans are going to win every time. But they're also going to control the leadership, right? That President pro tempore position, the presiding officer, is going to be from the Republican Party, right? And who knows, in the next election in November 2020, that could change. And if it did, the leadership would change, okay? And this will help you when we get to learning how a bill becomes a law, when you think in terms of majority versus minority, when it comes down to voting for things. Okay, but this is the current outlook in the Senate. All right, let's take a look at the House of Representatives. Okay, notice there's way more blue than you see red, right? And again, the white are going to be independent, and then they got one little yellow dot that's a libertarian, very small parties, right? Or no party affiliation. So we're not going to focus on those. We're going to focus on the Democrats and the Republicans here. Okay. Go down here to May. Looks like May 2020, right? As of May 2020, there were, out of the 435 seats in the House, right? Out of the 435, there were 233 Democrats compared to 196 Republicans. So we would say the majority are going to be Democrats, so they're going to have the leadership positions such as the Speaker of the House, the Majority Floor Leader, the Majority Whip. Those are all going to be from the Democratic Party. And then when things come up for a vote in the House, it's going to be dominated by the Majority Party, which is the Democratic Party in the House. So we actually got, in one House, you got the Democrats in control, and over in the other House, you got the Republicans in control. That's kind of crazy currently, right? But anyway, that's how it works. Who knows? Like I said, this could change in the next election, but this is the current breakdown of both houses. Right, moving on, here we go. We have the 5 steps of how a bill becomes a law, right? The 5 steps how a bill becomes a law. So the main job, main duty of the legislative branch, Congress, right? House and the Senate together, they make laws, right? So how do they actually do that? What's the process? That's what we're going to break down today with our conversation. Okay, so I'm going to give you a bunch of information, but at the end of the day, if you can just memorize and put together in your mind these 5 simple steps that I'm going to break down for you, you'll be able to whip any question you get on any kind of test or quiz. Okay, so this is the actual process that lawmakers go through to make a law. All right, we start out with the term bill. A bill is an idea for a law, a proposal, right? A suggestion. Okay, so here's a question for you. Where do ideas for bills come from, right? Who comes up with those ideas? Well, any of the 535 members of the Congress, right? So I'm coming up with that number by saying there's 100 senators and 435 House of Reps, right? You add that up, and there's 535 total members of Congress, the House plus the Senate. Their job is to make laws, so they're going to Congress every year, right, for their session with ideas about how they can help their constituents out, right? So they're probably coming with, 5 to 10 ideas for laws, or 5 bills, right? 5 to 10 bills. Who gives them those ideas, though, is going to be people, right? Voters, non-voters. The president, his job is to suggest legislation, although it's not to make laws. He's supposed to be a leader and suggest. But virtually anybody, okay? Anybody can come up with an idea for a law, and then it's the job of the Congress. Okay, we're talking about House of Reps and Senators. It's their job to now introduce it, okay, and propose it. Okay, Congress introduces thousands of bills every session, but less than 5% of them actually survive the tough process that we're going to explain to you today of how a bill becomes a law, start to finish. Okay, so there's a lot of steps here, and all along the way of these 5 steps, a bill can die. Okay, which is an idea for a law. It can die all along this process, all along the way. Okay, I want to give you 2 ideas about some recent ideas for laws that actually turned into laws. Recently, here, just went into January 2020, just went into effect is tobacco age. You used to buy tobacco in Florida at the age of 18, and so I'm talking about cigarettes, dip, vape, that kind of thing. But now you have to be 21 years old because Congress passed a law. Okay. Another law that was passed in the state of Florida was minimum wage went up. Okay, it went up by 10 cents. I think it's $8.56 now, something like that. But those are ideas that went through this process. There was a vote, there was a debate, and then it became a law. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about step number 1, introducing a bill, right? Of course, anybody can come up with an idea for a bill, but it's the job of Congress, the House and the Senate, right, together. It's their jobs, members of Congress. It's their job to actually introduce a bill. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, over in the House, how they do that is I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Legally Blonde 2. It's a cool movie I'd recommend. It's really going to shed some light on this process. But representatives, they go to the front, and there's a hopper, basically like a little bucket, if you will, that you put. You write it up. You write the idea for a law. You're introducing a bill, so you write it up on a piece of paper. You walk up and you drop it in the hopper. Okay. Remember, they have strict time limits on debates and things like that, so they have a very formal process to save time and be efficient. In the Senate, there's less members, so they have a little bit different process. Senators must formally present a bill. So basically, they ask to be recognized. They stand up and they actually present it out loud. Okay, so it's just a little bit different process of how a bill is introduced in the House versus a Senate. Okay, but once a bill is introduced in that manner, the next step is it's going to be given a number. Okay, each bill is given a number, and then it's going to be sent to a committee, which is step number 2 for committee action. Okay, I'll explain more about that here in just a second. All right, I'm on a website here where you can actually track bills and their progress all along the way. And you'll notice up here next to the bills that I have pulled up here, you'll see a number associated with it and a topic. This allows lawmakers and constituents, people, right, to follow a bill all along the process, right? They can kind of find out information if it failed, if it passed, is it in committee, kind of where is it at currently, and they can kind of keep tabs on it and check on it. We'll talk a little bit more about this here a little bit later, but I wanted to show you, you'll see each bill has a number associated with it, and that, like I said, just allows you to kind of find it quickly through search. You can just type it over here in the search and or read about it in the newspaper and refer to it by the number. Okay, next step. When a bill is introduced, it's given a number, and then it's sent to a committee for some committee action, right? What does that mean? Okay, well, let's go into it. Well, remember I told you there's thousands of bills that are introduced every year into Congress, right? And so they're only there from a short period of time, from January to almost August, right? And they have a lot of work to do to work through all thousands of those bills. And so what they do is they use the divide and conquer method. Okay, so when a bill is introduced, it's sent to a committee for them to be able to break it down and work on it. Now, I'll explain that in a little bit more detail here in a minute, but let me kind of relate it to you guys in your world, right? You know, like in the summertime when your parents are working and you're at home, you know, they say, hey, before I get home from work, I want you to make sure the house is clean. So let's say they get off at 5 o'clock. You guys start working on the house about 4:55, like 5 minutes before they get home, right? And so you ask your brothers or sisters or your friends or whoever's over, hey, real quick, you do the kitchen, you do the bathroom, I'll do the laundry, whatever. And you're just flying around getting it done. You're dividing and conquering things up, right? So you can accomplish a big task together as a team. That's kind of what Congress does with all thousands of these bills. Okay, I'm going to show you real quick. This is going to be the committees that exist within both the House and the Senate. Okay, and so there's like probably 20 committees in the House and probably about 18, I think, in the Senate. But here's the deal. When a bill is introduced, you first look at the topic that it deals with, and then they'll send it to the committee based on the topic or the subject matter that the bill pertains to. So, for example, you'll notice there's different topics of the names for the names of these different committees that exist. These are permanent standing committees in both the House and in the Senate. Okay, so it doesn't matter, like when a bill is introduced, it can start in either the House or the Senate. It doesn't matter. But it follows the same process if it goes to a committee next, right? Once it's introduced. And how do you know what committee to send the bill to? It depends on the subject matter or the topic of the bill. So let's say, for example, you had a bill concerning schools. Well, you have a committee here called the Education and Labor Committee, right? Let's say, you know, something dealt with the military, right? I believe there's a military, let's see, where is it at? Armed Services, right? You would send it to that committee, right? And we'll talk more about what they do here in just a minute. But you'll notice some of these same topics are going to also exist. But they just might word it differently over here in the Senate, right? Again, so there's like 18 to 20 different committees that exist within the House or the Senate. And now when a bill is here, what happens, right? Well, members of Congress, they're going to have to serve on more than one of these committees. So let's say you get elected as a House of Rep. You're probably going to serve on maybe 2 to 3 different committees, right? You're not going to serve on all of them, but you're going to serve on 2 or 3 of them, right? It's possible that you serve on a committee that you know nothing about the topic, right? It'd be like me serving on an agricultural committee. I don't know nothing about farming, right? But I'm charged, and I have the responsibility to make an honest judgment, use my vote in the best manner that represents the people that I represent, right? So what I have to do is I have to do the research, right? So when a bill's submitted to the committee, again, let's say I don't know anything about it, I'm going to bring in people that are for and against a particular bill from passing, right? I guess I need to back up for just 1 second and let you guys know. A committee in the House, I know there's 435 members in the House, right? Well, the committee is not going to be, each committee is not going to be all 435 members. Each committee is probably going to be 20 people max, right? Same thing over in the Senate. Each committee is only going to be about 20 people, let's say, right? And again, referring back to that movie, Legally Blonde 2, it shows you a committee in action and somebody going in front of a committee and speaking, right? And so those 20 folks get together and they hear all bills concerning that particular topic, right? So, for example, agriculture, right? Somebody wants to propose a bill concerning agriculture. It goes to the Agriculture Committee. Those 20 representatives are going to listen to the bill and determine if they're going to vote yes or no, whether it moves on to the next step. They act as a filter, basically, right? And so they're like, is this bill something that's going to help Americans out, or is it just really a waste of time? If they feel like it's a waste of time, they'll just put the bill to the side, and the bill will die right there in the committee, right? But if they feel it's something that is worthy of their attention and helping Americans out, they'll work through it. They'll talk through it. They'll tweak it. They'll bring in people that are for it. They'll listen to people that are against it before they actually have a vote and decide yes or no if they feel like it should move on and be a bill. I know it's kind of a complicated process that I'm explaining to you guys, but it's a way to quickly, instead of working through thousands of bills, right? You're able to break the workload down into more doable sections, if that makes sense. It's almost like, you guys go to 7 classes throughout the day, right? You don't go to just one teacher like you did in elementary school to learn everything. You kind of break things down and let teachers become experts, if you will, in the different topics in the different areas, right? So you go to English, you go to math, you go to science, you go to history, right? And you deal with just certain topics within those classes with those teachers, and it allows you to kind of have a full education and bring it all together. I hope I'm helping you guys out understand what a committee is and what their job is. Their job is just to act as a filter. If a bill should pass, if it's good, or if it should be set to the side and let it die if it's a waste of time. Okay, so this allows Congress to work through bills in a more efficient manner and get through all the work that they need to. They also have an opportunity while a bill's in Congress while a bill's in committee to, before they vote on it, they can debate it, they can tweak it, they can add things to it, they can change things. All those things are possible. Okay. I will add, most bills do die in the committee. Okay, and now politics do play a part in it. So remember, we were talking earlier about majority and minority, and so I'll try to be brief as I can on this, right? So over in the Senate, we have currently more Republicans than we do Democrats. Okay, well, who gets to serve as committee chairman? The leaders of these different committees that I just told you about, right? All these different committees have a committee chairman, right? Over in the Senate, because they have the majority party, they appoint a committee chairman from their party. So all the committee chairmen are going to be Republicans here currently in the Senate, while over in the House, all the committee chairmen in the House are going to be Democrats, right? And they get to determine what bills come up for conversation, what bills get talked about, what bills get voted in, and what bills get set to the side and die. So when we look at the Senate here, again, I'm telling you that the majority in the Senate currently is going to be Republicans, right? So any Democratic bill that's proposed probably has a good chance of dying because the Republicans who have the majority are going to push forward their agenda. And the same thing works over in the House. All these committees are going to be rigged in a manner where there's going to be more Democrats on each committee than Republicans, so that they can vote to push forward the Democratic agenda. And any Republican bills that are proposed probably have a good chance of dying because the majority are Democrats in the House. So anyway, there is some politics involved with it a little bit, and I just wanted to kind of point that out to you, that most bills do die in a committee, and a large part of it has to do with politics, okay, and which party member proposed it. Okay, let's go on to step 3 now. Okay, let's kind of put this all together and make sure you guys are understanding these 5 steps. Okay, so first, a bill is introduced in either the House or the Senate. It doesn't matter, right? Once a bill is introduced, it's given a number and sent to the committee. How do we know which committee to send it to, right? You got all these committees that exist in the House and the Senate. Like, how do you know? It depends on the topic or subject matter of the bill, right? Okay, now, once a bill's in committee, you're going to act as a filter. The committees are going to act as a filter. And most bills do die in a committee, but the ones that do get passed out and pushed onto the get pushed onto the floor, which is our next step here, floor action, step 3, right? At this point, once a bill has been voted out of committee and it's placed onto the floor, what does that mean? That means now a bill has been sent out. Let's say, for example, if the bill is in the House, right? A bill goes out to the floor. Now all 435 members in the House get to debate it and vote on it before it moves on to the next step. If a bill was over in the Senate, same kind of thing, right? A bill would go from the committee it's in, voted out onto the floor, and then once a bill gets out to the floor, all 100 members of the Senate have a chance to debate it and then vote if it's going to move on to the next step. Okay. Okay, a couple things I need to tell you about what happens when a bill is on the floor, right? Usually, the floor is just a formality. Usually, okay, and it does come down to politics, majority party, right? That whole thing. Usually, the floor goes with the recommendation of the committee. Why? Because the committee was the filter. They did the due diligence, the research. They brought the people that were for it and against it. They heard all the reasons why they should vote for it, why they shouldn't vote for it. So it's been vetted through a rigorous process. Once it gets out onto the floor, it's really just going to be a simple vote and then probably moved on to the next step, right? However, it's not always the case, right? When a bill gets out to the floor, right, voted out on from the committee, right? Although they usually go with the recommendation of the committee, they do have a chance to debate it still. They can amend it or attach things to it before they actually have a vote. Okay. Now I will tell you this: over in the Senate, this is the portion where if they were going to exercise a filibuster, remember that's something that the Senate only can use. They would do that at this point here on the floor action. Okay. Now, the last thing, okay, the same identical bill, okay, has to pass through both the House and the Senate before it can move on to the last step, which is the president's desk, right? So if a bill is introduced in the House, it goes through the committee, they voted out to the floor, and the floor says, yes, we like it. Well, we have a bicameral Congress, which means 2 houses. So a bill has to go through, which already went through the House, right? Now it has to go to the Senate, and it starts that whole process all over again. It's introduced, given a number, sent to a committee, placed out onto the floor, and then voted yes or no, right? The last step, again, is going to be the president's desk, right? But this part right here of the floor is crucial that you have a bill pass through both the House and the Senate before it can move on to that last step. Okay, I'm going to go backwards with it just one more time. A bill can be introduced in the House or the Senate. It doesn't matter, right? So let's say a bill's introduced in the Senate, right? It goes to the committee based on the topic that it deals with. The committee likes it, and they voted out favorably onto the floor. The floor says yes. Then that bill would go to the House, and that whole process would start all over again. It would be introduced, given a number, sent to a committee. If the committee likes it, it's voted out onto the floor. If the floor likes it, then it moves on to the last step, which is the president's desk. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense to you guys and you're comfortable now. Okay. So before we move on to talk about the president and all his actions that he has, right? What happens if you have one house that says yes to a bill, but another house says no? So the House voted it yes, but the Senate, it goes to the Senate and they say, no, we don't like this bill, right? Well, the bill just dies, right? That's just what happens. There is one more thing that can take place, though. It's called a conference committee. Okay, when you got one house that says yes, one house that says no, and the lawmakers can't, get on the same page as far as an agreement to it, they're going to get together in a committee called a conference committee. So you'll have an equal number of House of Representatives with an equal number of senators get together. Let's say 5 from each, something like that, right? And they get together, and they're going to work out a compromise to what are the hang-ups? What can they tweak things? Can they change things? Adjust things so that both the House and the Senate are happy, and they both can agree to make this bill become a law. So let's say they get together in a conference committee and they are able to work out a compromise. Well, once that happens, then that bill that they work out the differences on has to go back and start all over again in both of the houses. So it's going, it's introduced again, goes to the committee, that goes to the floor, and then both of them have to say yes before it can move on to the president's desk. Okay. So again, we have a bicameral Congress for a reason. It acts as a filter, check and a balance, if you will, and both houses have to agree before it can move on to the last step. Okay. So conference committee is not always used, but it is a tool if there's a major bill that is crucial to the economy or something like that in America. We really need a bill to pass through. But you're getting both sides hung up, the House and the Senate. We can attempt to use a conference committee to work out those differences and work out a compromise. Okay? So let's assume on this last step here, okay, step 5, that both the House and the Senate agree on a bill should become a law, right? So the last step is the president's desk, right? Okay? Okay, let's talk about the president's action, right? The last step, step 5. Now listen, this is important. The president does not make laws. He enforces or executes them, right? But he is a part of the process of how a bill becomes a law. He's the last step, right? And so we need to talk about, he has a 10-day time limit to act on any bill, and he has 4 actions. So I want to make sure you guys understand these and you're comfortable with them, okay? So once a bill passes through both the House and the Senate, it goes to the president's desk. Okay, the president has a 10-day time limit to act on it. Okay, and 4 actions. Okay, 2 of the actions will make a bill become a law. 2 of these actions will kill a bill. Okay, so let's go through them. The president can simply sign a bill that comes to his desk. What happens if he does that? It just simply becomes a law. Okay, or the president can set a bill aside. Okay, if there's some philosophical or political reason why the president doesn't want to be associated with it, but doesn't want to prevent this bill from becoming a law, he just sets a bill to the side, and if Congress is in session still, that's the key, right? Then the bill just automatically passes and becomes a law. I don't know, the example I always give on this one would be like, let's say some law dealt with drugs or abortion, some kind of hot topic like that. An election was coming up, and he didn't want to be associated in that drama. He could just elect to set a bill to the side and not act on it, and so he's not associated with it, and there's no fallback on him. Just giving you the reason why he might set it aside. Maybe there's religious reasons why he can't do it. You know what I mean? So can't sign it. But he just doesn't want to be a part of it. All right, next one is called a pocket veto. Well, let me skip 3. Let me skip pocket veto, and then I'll come back to it. I'm going to do veto. Veto is simple. Okay, a president doesn't like a bill that's on his desk. He just stamps it veto, boom. It just means he killed it. Okay, if the president vetoes a bill, he kills it, and it's dead right there. Now, the only way a veto can still be, only way a bill can still become a law if the president vetoes it is by this word right here, override. Okay, an override is a vote by both houses in Congress. Okay, so the House and the Senate, a bill goes back to both the House and the Senate, and they have to get 2/3 of a vote in both houses. If they can get that, then they can override a presidential veto and still make a bill become a law. But this power, veto power, is the power of the president to kill a bill, basically. Okay. Now you would think 2/3 is not difficult, but it is, right? Up here in step 3, floor action, when you have a bill have to pass through both the House and the Senate, in order for a bill to pass through one of those houses, it just has to have a majority vote. So majority percentage-wise is like 51% or more, right? So that's not super complicated to get, right? It's not super difficult. You just got to have a majority, right? But when you're talking about a 2/3 vote, that's 66, 67%. So that's significantly more people that you got to persuade, and it's just more, and you got to have it in both the House and the Senate, not just one of the houses. So it's more it's easier said than done. It's very difficult to be able to achieve an override, but it has happened, and presidents have vetoed laws or bills before, and Congress has overridden them before. So this is an option that is possible. Last thing is called a pocket veto. A pocket veto is going to be used by the president where he sets a bill to the side, and the key is if Congress has adjourned and they went home for the summer. Remember, I told you guys Congress meets basically from January to August, except for special sessions and things like that, right? Kind of like you guys do the school year. You guys go from August to about May or June, and you go home for the summer. Congress does the same thing. If Congress has adjourned, they've gone home for the summer, but they leave bills at the last minute that they were able to do it. They passed before they, right there when they finished. They finished up some things and left it on the president's desk for him to sign. He has the option to use a pocket veto because Congress is not in session. And they can't, get back together to have this override, right? Because everybody's gone. They went back home, If that happens and a president sets a bill to the side when Congress isn't in session, they have adjourned, then after 10 days, that bill just dies on its own, and he doesn't even have to do anything with it, right? It kind of reminds me of pocket veto. If you're having trouble with understanding it, it kind of reminds me of imagine you guys put assignments in my bucket for me to grade on the last day of school, and you guys get on the bus and leave. Well, you're hoping that I grade them and put them in the grade book, right? That's kind of what a pocket veto is, right? Congress is gone. The president has a choice. He can either sign it or he can just set that bad boy to the side and it just dies automatically on his own, right? So the key is you want to get, if it's something important, you want to get that into the president way before you adjourn. And so the president doesn't have this ability to pocket veto any bills. Okay, so 10-day time limit, 4 actions: sign a bill, set a bill to the side. Congress is in session; it becomes a law. Pocket veto and veto, that's going to kill a bill. Okay, the only way to make a bill become a law still the president vetoes it is through an override, which is 2/3 vote in both houses. I wanted to share this with you guys. You just learned how a bill becomes a law, the 5 steps. And this is just kind of a wrap it up, show you all the different ways that a bill can die, all the ways a bill can be killed, all along the way, all along the process. So I'm going to roll through this super quick. And you guys, there is a couple of new things I want to go over with you right here. So just kind of hang in there. Most of this is review. Okay. So, a bill's introduced, it's given a number, and it's sent to a committee. That committee acts as a filter, and most bills do die while they're in committee. They don't get voted out onto the floor, and they just die right there in the committee. Maybe they just get set to the side. Maybe it's because of political reasons or whatever. A bill can also die once it gets out to the floor. Remember, if you don't have both houses that agree to a bill, that same identical version of a bill, because we have a bicameral Congress, the bill just dies, right? So if the House says yes, but the Senate says no, the bill dies, right? Now, you do have the ability to organize a conference committee. That is possible, but it doesn't always take place, right? Again, if you get people together in the conference committee and they can't reach a compromise or an agreement, then a bill just dies right there, okay? Here's a couple tactics that the lawmakers try to use sometimes to maybe delay a bill to delay a vote from taking place, or just a tactic that they try to have to do all they can to make a bill not pass. Okay, there's something called a quorum. Okay, a quorum means you have to have a majority of the members present to even have a vote. So it's like if you guys were to skip school and not come to school, I don't know, senior skip day or whatever, right? And the majority of my class is gone. It's very difficult for me as a teacher to move on with the curriculum, right? And so it's that same kind of tactic using a quorum in Congress. They know that the rule is you have to have a majority of members present to have a vote. So, maybe they'll arrange a sick day, something like that, to try to delay or prevent a vote from taking place that they know is probably inevitable that it's going to pass, right? A filibuster we talked about earlier with Strom Thurmond doing the longest 24 hours and 18 minutes trying to delay the Civil Rights Act from passing. It's just where you just talk and talk and talk a bill to death. It's a privilege that only the Senate has. And then the only way to stop a filibuster is using a cloture vote, right? Which basically just limits the time that a senator can debate about a particular topic, right? All right, last step is the president's desk. These are the two areas where a bill can die on step 5. He can veto it or pocket veto it, right? That's when Congress has adjourned and went home for the summer. 10 days goes by, he can just put a bill to the side and it just dies on its own. The only way for a bill to still be able to become a law, if the president exercises his veto power, is through an override. An override is where you have 2/3 vote in both of the houses, in the Senate and the House, right? So there you go. Those are the different ways there that a bill can die all along the way. And remember we said only 5% of the thousands of bills introduced on a yearly basis actually make it start to finish to become a law. We're going to put all this together on how a bill becomes a law, right? I'm on this website, and you can search. It's govtrack.us. Anyway, you can track bills by typing in the title or just the number, right? Remember, each bill has a number, and it's going to tell you the sponsor of the bill, okay? Whether it was a House of Representative, whether it was a senator, where they're from, and it'll let you read the detail of it, but it'll also tell you when it was introduced, if it failed, or if it actually made it through and was signed by the president and became a law. So I've got I've got some here that were failed in the House, some failed in the Senate here, and I'm going to filter it here real quick, and I wanted to see ones that were enacted. So this means that the president signed it. So this one here is a House bill. It was introduced in March 23rd of 2020, and it was actually signed by the president. So that means this right here, Student Veteran Coronavirus Response Act of 2020, it was actually a bill that became a law, okay, of some sort. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of show you that, kind of make this all come together in your mind. All right, these 3 terms are the last thing for the legislative branch I want to cover with you. You just learned how a bill becomes a law, the 5 simple steps. And now, besides the lawmakers, these 3 terms are a part of the process. I would say they're influencers, right? So you need to know them and kind of understand what these terms mean, okay? So there's an act called lobbying, right? And it's activities by which group pressures are brought to bear on legislators, so the lawmakers, right? The legislative process and all aspects of the public policy making process, right? So when people participate in lobbying, what they're doing is they're trying to persuade their lawmakers to do things that benefit their interests. That would be the best way I could describe it to you. A lobbyist is an actual person. That's somebody's job, right? It's somebody who tries to persuade public officials to do things that interest a group, that interest groups want them to do, right? And now we need to talk about what an interest group is, right? So it's a private organization whose members share certain views and work to shape public policies. So they're not elected officials, but they're a group of people that come together for a common purpose. And it could be all aspects of life, right? So I got two examples for you. Something called the NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And their job, or I shouldn't say their job, but their organization, their mission, their purpose is to secure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination and ensure the health and well-being of all persons, right? So that's their mission, right? The NAACP is an interest group, and they have lobbyists that work with lawmakers to help benefit members of their group that belong to the NAACP in terms of laws and policy, right? Same thing with the NRA, the National Rifle Association, right? It has to do with protecting your Second Amendment right? They want to make sure they preserve it and, try to prevent any laws from infringing on your Second Amendment rights. And so they have lobbyists that talk to politicians and, try to assure that people that belong to this interest group's rights aren't infringed upon, okay? And that's a hot topic in our media right now, with gun control and AR-15s. That's a hot topic. So that's kind of what the mission of the NRA is to, or what they're concerned about, I should say. How this kind of works in the grand scheme of things is these two organizations and many, many, many others. There's hundreds of organizations out there, interest groups, right? And no matter if there's 10 people that belong to them or thousands, right? Like these groups here, there's thousands of people, maybe even millions that belong to those groups, right? Well, they raise money, right? So you might even have to pay money to be in their organization, or they just fundraise, right? But regardless, here's the deal. You're a politician and you want people's vote, right? Well, you also need money to run for campaign, right? It takes money to travel around and stay in hotels and meet people, right? Shake hands and kiss babies and all that stuff, right? And so these interest groups, they kind of do that I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine method, right? And so they'll have their group of people that belong to their organization back a political candidate in exchange for that candidate making sure they take care of their interests, right? And so I'm a part of a teachers union, right? And we pay our union dues. And some of that money of our union dues goes to help support political campaigns that the union backs, right? And so if those candidates that we're backing with the political campaign funds that we're giving them, if they get elected, they're supposed to help that group of people out that belong to that interest group with the interest, whatever their interests are, you know what I mean? Whether it concerns education, gun laws, or whatever, right? Whatever the interest we're talking about here, they're supposed to make sure that they kind of take care of those folks' interests, if that makes sense. I'm kind of dancing around the concept because it's so broad, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say is, if you could assure that you're going to get millions of votes from a particular political group or interest group, you're going to do it as a politician, right? Because you're trying to assure as most votes as you can have as possible, and by linking up with these interest groups and taking care of their needs, they're your constituents too, right? But it's also a way for you, like I said, to really make sure you get a bunch of votes and also maybe some funds to help support your political campaign. Guys, I hope that makes sense. That's a
Lobbying.
Lobbyists?
Lobbyists. 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 You've probably heard of them before. They're kind of a go-to villain in modern politics. But what exactly are lobbyists? And more importantly, are they really buying our government out from under us? Yeah, they really are. And here's 5 ways they're doing it. Number 1. So if you're a politician, you have to raise an obnoxious amount of money just to run for office. And one of the easiest ways to raise that kind of cash is by turning to lobbyists. Alright, so here's how it works. Let's say you are a big bank. Now, you want to get a senator on the banking committee to vote your way on an upcoming bill. So the easiest thing you could do would be to just, bribe him. I mean, you could give $100,000 directly to his re-election campaign, nice and clean. But unfortunately for you, that is super illegal, I hope. Yep, still super illegal. So instead, you're gonna hire yourself a lobbying firm to serve as the middleman for what would, in any sane universe, basically just be a bribe. Your lobbyist can legally organize a swanky fundraiser that brings in $100,000 for the senator's re-election campaign, and at that fundraiser, your lobbyists can just happen to have a friendly chat with the senator's staff about your feelings on banking policy. At the end of the day, the senator is still up $100,000, he still knows exactly where that $100,000 came from, and he knows which ways to vote if he wants the money to keep on flowing. But this time, nobody's broken any laws. Pretty sweet scam, right? This is a hugely common practice, and it helps explain the next item on our list. Number 2. So, in many cases, lobbyists actually write our laws. Literally. For example, let's take a look at the 2014 Omnibus Budget deal. Now, Congress used this deal to secretly put taxpayers back on the hook to bail out banks that engage in risky derivatives trading. Yes, derivatives. You might remember them from such things as causing the 2008 financial crisis, nearly destroying the economy of the United States, and almost causing Western civilization to fold in on itself. So yeah, that happened. Now, 70 of the 85 lines that put taxpayers back on the hook for these derivatives trades were cut and pasted word for word from model legislation that was drafted by Citigroup lobbyists. Citigroup, quite literally, wrote its own rules. And this isn't just a problem with the big banks. Like, just last week, we reported on how lobbyists for the chemical industry may have authored an entire portion of a bill that shuts down efforts to crack down on toxic chemicals. This kind of behavior happens every single day. Number 3. So, lobbyists routinely offer members of Congress and their staffers lucrative jobs at their firms or their clients' companies once they leave office. This practice is often called the revolving door, and it works like this.
When we would become friendly with an office and they were important to us, I would say, or my staff would say to him or her at some point, when you're done working on the Hill, we'd very much like you to consider coming to work for us. Now, the moment I said that to them, that was it. We owned them. And what does that mean? Every request from our office, every request of our clients, everything that we want, they're going to do.
Yeah, just let that sink right in. This practice has become crazily common. In the 1970s, less than 5% of retiring legislators went on to become lobbyists. Now, half of all retiring senators and a third of retiring House members do. And it's hard to overemphasize how tempting a revolving door gig can be. Congressmen who go on to become lobbyists get, on average, a 1,452% raise. 1,400%. I mean, can you imagine what that kind of raise would do for you at, say, your job? Number 4. So, thanks to loopholes in how federal law defines what a lobbyist actually is, many elected officials go on to take what are effectively revolving door lobbying jobs without ever having to officially register as lobbyists. Now, researchers estimate that there's actually twice as much lobbying as what's publicly disclosed. That makes lobbying a $7 billion a year industry. And it means that only half of the people who are being paid to influence our elected officials are required to follow what few rules there actually are. Number 5. So possibly the most upsetting part of all of this is how ridiculously effective lobbying is. One study found that for every dollar a company spends on lobbying, it gets $220 back in tax savings. I mean, that's crazy. That is a 22,000% return on investment. And it works really well for both sides of the aisle, which is why top lobbying firms raise big money for both Republicans and Democrats, usually at the same time. Like, right this second, there is a lobbying firm in D.C. called Aiken Gump. Its roster is full of former members of Congress, and its clients include massive companies like the Chamber of Commerce, Monsanto, Boeing, and foreign governments like the United Arab Emirates and Japan. And Aiken Gump lobbyists are, as we speak, holding fundraisers for presidential candidates like Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, and John Kasich. They all work together. So all this begs a pretty obvious question. Why don't we just ban lobbying altogether? Well, constitutionally we can't, and we really shouldn't. Lobbying itself isn't inherently evil. Like, the act of lobbying is just advocating a position to an elected official, and that's not the problem. It's protected by the First Amendment for a good reason. People need to be able to make a case to their elected representatives even if they can't be there in person. The problem is that lobbyists are routinely using money, favors, gifts, and lucrative job offers to do the convincing for them. Put more simply, you can lobby and you can donate money to a politician, but you should not be allowed to do both at the same time. It's like handing the referee $50 before the game starts, and $50,000 right after the game. Luckily, this is something that we can actually fix with a single law. Reforms to ban lobbyists from coordinating fundraisers, close the revolving door, and end shadow lobbying have already been proposed at the federal level, and they're currently picking up serious momentum in cities and states around the country, from Tallahassee, Florida to Seattle, Washington. We've got a bunch of ideas for how to keep that momentum going, and we would love your help to do it. So if you want to help us fix lobbying in, the entire country, check out this link right here at the bottom of the screen.
This special interest group,
all these interest groups,
interest group money,
it has largely been driven by special interest groups.
What exactly is an interest group? And why do they get people all riled up? To figure this out, let's play Which of These is an Interest Group? Dog owners, kindergartners, car dealers, or NBA players? The answer? They all could be interest groups. People who care about the same things come together to form an interest group. In order to advance their goals, interest groups can seek to influence the government for funding or favorable laws. For example, kindergartners want more recess, car dealers want to close the deal, and NBA players, they just want to jam. There are a lot of ways that interest groups try to influence the government. Some hire lobbyists to make their case for them. Some take to the streets to hold rallies or start petitions. Some groups let money do the talking and donate to politicians. And some take to the airwaves and social media to get noticed. But why are interest groups controversial? Interest groups work to promote the interests of their members, and this can mean working against the interests of others. The difference between interest group and special interest is a matter of perspective. For instance, who could be against a playground? How about a retiree who doesn't have kids or grandkids? He doesn't want to pay more taxes for a playground he'll never use.
We all want the government to be on our side. But sometimes it's hard to accommodate the interests of every group.